All right, for today's video review, we're going to be taking a look at Transformers Combiner Wars Deluxe Class Swindle. A fairly decent figure, all things considered. He more or less gets the job done. I would say that, Swindle is one of those characters where it's just like he actually really stands out from most of these Scramble City, Combiner Limb characters in that, like, he actually has his own character that kind of shows up on his own sometimes, like a few of the Stunticons have as well, but not really to the same kind of like specificity of character as Swindle has had in like other media that where he doesn't actually combine. So he kind of carries a little bit more weight in terms of like having to be a decent standalone figure than some of the other Combaticons. And yeah, I feel like he works fairly well as a combiner limb, but as a standalone figure, there's there's some areas in which you can improve. Mostly, I think the robot mode is okay, but the Jeep mode here, I feel like it leaves a little bit something to be desired. It's definitely a stylized version compared to the original Jeep mode of Swindle, so it's already kind of off the gate, just like a little bit different than the original design. But then he like has these like huge shoulder chunks here, which are a little bit weird looking, I think, on this vehicle. The roll cage doesn't always like perfectly line up. Like you want this bit of sculpting to line up, but then when you bring it up like this, where it lines up with the roll cage, it just doesn't quite work. Like it's close, but not quite there. So it's a little bit messy of a vehicle mode, but he does have some nice sculpted detail in there. Like I love that he's got like the little pouches on the side here, and he actually does have like a little sculpted steering wheel in there. Like there's no real space in there for anyone to sit, but still kind of a nice detail. But yeah, so it's an okay vehicle mode, but not incredible. They also did use this mold for they just like changed out the head sculpt and made it Hound in Combiner Wars as well. But the big thing about this mold is that it's actually like a very heavy retool of the Rook mold, which I'll show off in a little bit. But yeah, either way, here he is in his vehicle mode. I think it's a little strange that these wheels clip on this way and these wheels clip on this way, so the clips are a different color, but whatever. I really don't care that much about that, but worth pointing out. But yeah, in terms of accessories, he comes with his little Gatling gun type thing here, and there's a few options for where you can store this. I mean, you can just peg it on to one of the shoulder blocks here, which honestly I would be okay with if that was the only storage, just because like usually I hate the big stupid guns being pegged onto the top of vehicle modes, but since he is actually a military vehicle and this is relatively within the size of like a gunner thing on an actual military Jeep, like it doesn't look as weird to me. But it also has this hole on the side here, so you can peg it in sideways into the middle, and I feel like that looks even better, so that's where I choose to store it. And then he's got the hand foot gun here, and his is actually sculpted where he's got like some, I don't know, kind of like storage containers on the side here, maybe like ammo containers, since like the belt of ammo is coming out of it, which is nice sculpting. But yeah, unfortunately, in terms of storage for this, you are supposed to just flip it upside down and peg it on like that, and that I think looks stupid. But I've always just, like I've said in a lot of these Scramble City Combiner Wars reviews, I role play that these can kind of fly around on their own and be little drones or something. So whatever. But yeah, that's how his vehicle mode works. In terms of comparisons in this mode, here he is with Sideswipe, just so you can see how he scales with a modern deluxe there. And I mean, he's a little bit shorter than Sideswipe, but he is like physically like shorter lengthwise, taller height wise. So I feel like the scale relatively works there, because he's kind of like a weird sort of indeterminate size Jeep anyway, but I feel like that works relatively well. Here he is with the Rook mold, just so you can see just how many things were resculpted on this. Like he lost a whole set of wheels there. Like he still has some noticeable things that are the same, like the head being in the back here and the shoulder chunks. And the placement of like the two sets of wheels, but really like it's hard to actually find too many things on him that are the same sculpt. Like they do have the same wheels here, but still they're pretty much completely reshaped vehicles, which is pretty cool. And then last but not least, here he is with Vortex, the other one that we've taken a look at so far. I'll show these guys off together kind of as we go along here. But yeah, to get onto transformation, first of all, we just want to take off the weapon here. Again, if you're at all familiar with the Rook mold, he does do a lot of similar things. It's all pretty much the same transformation, it's just reshaped parts. But yeah, you want to take this entire top section with the front of the hood here and just rotate it up like that so you can kind of get the arms out and just sort of untab them from the body and then bring them out to the side on these armatures like that, and then rotate them forward at the forearms there. We'll take his head, flip it around like that, and then rotate it around, and then you can take this whole section and kind of double hinge it up. This peg will go into this little groove right here, and it'll actually just collapse on his back like that. Then we can take the entire front section here and split it, and of course it just does the classic Combiner Wars transformation for the legs, this time going off to the side rather than the front or back. And then you can just take the little toe bits and double hinge them forward till they click into place, and there we have Swindle in his robot mode. And yeah, I think it works relatively well as Swindle. It's definitely a little bit beefier than you'd kind of want Swindle to be, especially when you start comparing him to like the other Combaticons, which I really think is more Brawl's problem than Swindle, which we'll take a look at in a future video. But yeah, no, I think it works relatively well. I do like his head sculpt. I feel like the two different shades of the like gunmetal on there look really nice with the kind of like metallic painted purple as well. It's just a really nice looking head sculpt. He definitely, he's got some of that like chest detailing that was sort of like not present on the original toy, but present in the cartoon, where it implies that the grill of the Jeep becomes like this section, even though that's not even what the grill of this Jeep looks like. But it's there. It doesn't have to be cheating if you don't want it to be, since that detail again is not at all present in the vehicle mode of this toy. But yeah, in terms of his weapons here, obviously we can give him his gun here to hold in his hand. In terms of storage, he's got kind of an interesting thing going on where like you can do, just like that and pick it onto the side of his arm, which is not like terrible, but he does have little tiny posts right here that you can use to actually shove into the hinge of this back piece here so you can get it sitting over his shoulder. Now, the interesting thing about this is that I believe this was actually like a running change at the time. Like the first copies of this figure that came out did not have that feature. And then they, I guess, kind of figured out that could happen, and then they, changed it. So I'm thankful that mine is one of the ones that has that, because I feel like that's great storage for him, where it can just kind of sit over his shoulder and kind of fold up and be out of the way. Because I like that way better than just like pegging it onto the side of his arm. But And then obviously, you can give him the hand-foot gun, which doesn't even sit totally straight in his hand because it kind of bumps into the tab here. So it's like just ever so slightly like rotated this way, but not to a terrible degree. And then again, no real good storage aside from just kind of pegging it onto his arm or something like that, which I think looks pretty stupid, but whatever. In terms of articulation, the head is on a ball joint, so it can rotate around. It gets a pretty decent range kind of side to side too, so you can kind of like look up and down a little bit and, cock his head, which is nice. Shoulders are on ball joints, which can rotate around like that and go out to the side. He does also have this this transformation joint, which you can kind of use as like a backwards butterfly joint. It's got a bicep swivel, fairly deep elbow bend there, nothing at the wrist, so those are just sculpted in place. Waist cut, hips are on ball joints, which can go forward, back, out to the side. He's got a thigh swivel, about 90 degrees of bend at the knee there. He does kind of have hollow legs just because of how that works for transformation, since most of the other Combiner War limbs that do that kind of transformation have the legs like open up and reclose, so they kind of get away without having any of the like hollow detail. But since his is just like that, then he doesn't really get that, unfortunately. And then he also does have ankle tilt, which is nice because, like, honestly, this was not a regular thing that figures had at the time. Like, he was, one of the few Combiner Wars figures that actually had a proper ankle tilt, and I feel like it's really nice on him just because of like how chunky his like lower legs are. You wouldn't kind of expect that. You'd sort of just expect this to be like sculpted in place like that, but it's nice that he does have that ankle tilt. But yeah, in terms of comparisons in this mode, here he is again with Sideswipe, just for that standard size comparison. So you can see, yeah, a little bit bulkier for Swindle. I mean, I guess I don't really mind him being bulkier than like Sideswipe, for example, because he does turn into like a military Jeep. But I do always think of him as like one of the less bulky members of the actual Combaticons, whereas the Deluxes from Combiner Wars, he's definitely the bulkiest mold out of the four of them. But That's what they look like together. Again, here he is again with Rook. Just so you can see all the things that were changed here. I think the only things that I really noticed that are the same are like obviously the wheels, the internal things like the combiner port, his lower waist section here, like, and the upper legs, the like hinges for the elbows and like some of the stuff like that. But otherwise pretty pretty changed up here. It doesn't have a lot of the same parts, which is nice to see. They definitely, they've got a similar silhouette, but they have completely different identities, I would say. And then last but not least, here he is again with Vortex, just so you can see what the two of them look like together. And yeah, decent looking team so far. Again, I forgot to do his to show him off, to do the limb mode before we finish off here. Again, it's pretty similar. You pretty much just bring him back to truck mode for the leg here. But I think what you're supposed to do, which I always found kind of strange, is when you get the arms back in place here, you're actually supposed to take this section and then fold it up like this, and there's like dedicated tabs on his arms to tab it in, to do that for the combine mode leg there. And then you flip out that bit, and like, yeah, it looks okay, but you also can just like, take this bit and fold it back down where it was for Jeep mode, which I feel like is a lot more clean and accurate to like the original, like Swindle, and how like the full Jeep just kind of became the leg there. So I don't know. I like that way better, though technically you are supposed to leave that panel up. You can do it either way. And then obviously for arm mode here, sometimes this panel does like to come undone. You do actually want to leave the arms up like that, and then you again do this transformation with the top piece here, where you have this locked in like that, which is nice because it makes him like one of the few kind of like arm transformations that actually has something to do with the original robot mode arms, which not all of them do. So because they're actually like nestled in that piece there, I feel like that that functionality makes much more sense for the arm mode than it does for the leg mode. But yeah, no, pretty good looking arm for a character that I'm never gonna have be an arm, because Swindle is like iconically supposed to be a leg. And then you can take this gun and like peg it onto the side there like that if you want, or for the leg mode you can just literally peg it on where it was in vehicle mode. But yeah, decent limb modes for this mold. I feel like it like actually has more complete looking arm and leg than a lot of the Combiner Wars figures do. So kind of a leg up in that competition, no pun intended. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to him. A fun figure. Allegedly, like I said, we do have like a leaked listing for a new deluxe Swindle next year, but no other Combaticons. So maybe they're just starting Combaticons early, or doing like some standalone kind of Swindle, like a version of the animated Swindle or something like that. I can't really remember what it's listed as, or if it just says Swindle, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. If you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. I do reviews every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. And without further ado, here we have Transformers Combiner Wars Swindle.